For many modern believers, walking out of church on a Sunday afternoon comes with a quiet, invisible weight. It is a subtle psychological burden, a lingering sense of inherent defectiveness that presses down on everyday life. To locate the origin of that weight, we have to trace it back roughly 1,500 years to the consolidation of a specific theological framework, the doctrine of the fall. This interpretation taught that humanity was evicted from paradise, severing our direct connection to the divine. This diagram illustrates the architecture of that traditional theology. It positions the human experience inside a dark, gray space. Behind you is a locked door representing a lost, perfect past in Eden. Ahead of you is another locked door representing a distant, post-death future in heaven. Inside this structure, earthly existence feels like a waiting room. It becomes a punitive tunnel of original sin, where daily life is stripped of divine presence, serving only as an endurance test you must pass to eventually unlock the door ahead. Framing life this way served a historical purpose for early theologians, trying to offer hope to believers suffering through war and plague. But today, that same framework traps people in a posture of continuous guilt, overshadowing the actual purpose of their existence. The structural flaw in that waiting room model is exposed by a massive anomaly right in the text of Genesis 3:8, occurring immediately after the first humans consumed the forbidden fruit. If the consumption of the fruit triggered the catastrophic destruction of paradise, the text should describe apocalyptic ruin. Instead, the verse simply notes the sound of God taking a peaceful stroll through the garden in the cool of the late afternoon. There is no fire, no collapsed sky, and no vanished garden. Read carefully. Genesis 3:24 details that humanity was blocked from accessing one specific geographic path leading to the tree of life. It never states that the surrounding space of Eden ceased to exist, or that God abandoned the environment. Centuries later, Jesus affirms this continuity in Luke 17 when he states, "The kingdom of God is already within you," and again in John 5 when he describes passing from death to life in the present tense. He is describing a current reality, not a future post-mortem destination. These texts suggest that humanity never physically left the boundaries of Eden. Instead, the displacement happened in our perception. We lost the theological lens required to recognize that we are still standing squarely inside the garden. Reclaiming that lens requires solving a temporal misalignment. Reading the creation account as a single timeline obscures how time actually functions in the text. The top teal line tracks the divine clock, compressing 13.8 billion years into 6 cosmic stages. The bottom line tracks the human clock, measuring 6,000 years of civilization. Overlaying them reveals all recorded history fits strictly inside the 6th node. Unlike the previous 5 days, the 6th day in Genesis 1 lacks the concluding refrain, "There was evening and there was morning." This textual silence, combined with the assertion that God is still working, suggests the 7th day remains in the future. We are currently living out the 6th day. The universe is still expanding, creation is still unfolding, and Eden remains a present, active environment. Operating inside this active Eden requires a physical vessel built for the environment. The hydrogen in your body formed in the cooling aftermath of the Big Bang. The carbon and oxygen required stars to ignite, undergo nuclear fusion, and eventually die in massive supernova explosions to forge the iron in your blood. Mainstream astrophysics confirms this 13.8 billion year preparation period. As Carl Sagan famously observed, the human body is literally assembled from recycled star stuff. For those stars to form, the early universe's expansion rate and physical constants had to be tuned to an impossibly exact degree. If gravity were fractionally stronger, the universe collapses. Fractionally weaker, stars never ignite. Theoretical physicist Roger Penrose calculated the mathematical probability of the universe's initial conditions aligning by pure chance to allow for complex life. The resulting number, 1 part in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123, effectively eliminates the possibility of a random chemical accident. Genesis 2:7 contextualizes this physical engineering by adding a second material. The text states God breathed the breath of life directly into the dust of the ground. The human entity is a structural bridge. Billions of years of cosmic stardust fuse tightly with the direct breath of the Creator. You are a deliberate, heavily engineered divine fragment, divine to operate on this planet. This intentionality refutes the view of humanity as an inherently worthless accident. Consider a thought experiment. Imagine an advanced robotics company builds a robotic companion, programmed to love you flawlessly. It caters to your every need, but its source code makes it physically impossible for the machine to ever leave you or disobey an order. That machine provides perfect obedience, but it cannot provide love. If an entity lacks the genuine capacity to reject you, its affection is merely the execution of a script. True love requires the presence of a viable alternative. This grid visualizes Eden's spatial architecture. The tree of knowledge was not an arbitrary trap, but the mechanical requirement for free will. With 99.9% permission, this single point of restriction established actual freedom, ensuring humanity had the capacity to choose. The serpent in Genesis 3 attacks this architecture in 3 distinct stages. First, it injects doubt regarding the Creator's instructions. Second, it distorts the reality of the garden, making permission feel like an overwhelming restriction. Finally, it promises a false, accelerated shortcut to divinity. The choice of the tree marked a heavy transition. Humanity stepped out of spiritual infancy and assumed the weight of moral responsibility. The tree provided the essential training ground for soul-making, the actual practice of free will. Without the capacity to refuse, the act of choosing love would be impossible. Navigating the choices of a present-tense Eden requires a highly accurate map of your internal architecture. This diagram maps the human system. The base layer is the physical body. Above sits the mind, driven by the ego. The third layer is the soul, acting as an internal observer. The foundational layer is the divine fragment, the unchanging core of your identity. Theology suggests a spiritual counterpart to the physical structure of the universe, the Eden love field. Just as Einstein demonstrated that mass curves space-time to create gravity, this field represents the spiritual curvature of the universe around the nature of God, exerting a constant pull on every divine fragment. When you make a choice that aligns your physical body, your ego-driven mind, and your observant soul with the frequency of that divine fragment, the system locks into place. This alignment generates profound internal peace. Spiritual maturity is not the process of escaping your physical body or leaving the earth. It is the rigorous, daily discipline of forcing these 4 layers into alignment while operating directly inside the physical world. We can now return to that dark, isolated waiting room that has dominated theology for 15 centuries. Shifting away from that restrictive model shatters the walls of the waiting room, revealing a vast, vibrant, infinite grid. This is the kingdom farm. Earth functions as the open field of the main game, the primary stage where human existence unfolds. Navigating office politics, sitting in gridlock traffic, navigating an argument with your spouse. These entirely secular, frustrating moments are not distractions keeping you away from a spiritual life. These mundane interactions are the modern-day tree of knowledge. Every interaction presents a binary choice. You can yield to the ego, generating the dark pain of isolation, or you can endure the white pain of sacrificing your comfort to choose patience, integrity, and love. Dropping the theological burden of the invisible backpack brings immediate psychological relief. You no longer have to wait to experience the kingdom of God. We never left Eden. We are standing in the middle of the 6th day of creation, and the choices you make today are the active, physical steps in the ongoing creation of your own soul.